If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. EFCC operatives map properties linked to former Abia State Governor Orji Uzor Kalu forfeited to the federal government. Some newspapers fault EFCC's action, insists it's not affected by forfeiture order. President Buhari condemns alleged killing of 4 Action Against Hunger aid workers abducted by insurgents near Damasak, Borno State in July this year. A group under the aegis of Congress of Northern Nigeria Christians demand release of abducted schoolgirl Leah Sharibu from Boko Haram captivity before Christmas. And Sudan's former president Omar al-Bashir to spend 2 years in a social reform facility for corruption. For more information on our top stories and others, please visit our website. It's channelstv.com. youtube.com/channels web has videos of all our shows. The Edo State Police Command has listed the arrest of 34 suspected cultists and a man who allegedly defiled 2 children amongst the recent successes recorded in his fight against crime. The State Commissioner of Police, Mr. Lawan Jimeta, who made the disclosure, also advised members of the public to come forward with relevant information that could help to secure the state, especially during the Yuletide. The debate on whether Nigeria has made the right decision by shutting its land borders against its West African neighbors is still ongoing 5 months after the decision was made. With security and economy mostly the premise of the argument, those against the closure say there are historical perspectives. Our correspondent, Dario Edo, has this report.
There have been arguments for and against Nigeria's decision to close its land borders. The federal government insists its decision is to protect local economic actors, and that is already paying off, with the administration counting its blessings.
Yeah. We have asked our neighbors, please let's all respect the protocol on transit. If they do that, the borders will be opened. But you cannot continue to play the big brother at the expense of our national security, at the expense of our national economy.
In 2017, for example, the Republic of Benin was the world's 2nd largest importer of tramadol after the United States. All those drugs came into northern Nigeria. There's the drug problem. So it's not about just undermining domestic production. It's not about the fiscal pressure of government with smuggling subsidized petrol. It's about destroying entire populations with drugs.
But some believe the success of the closure is debatable. This lecture, organized by the Faculty of Arts, University of Lagos, has thrown up that debate, and Emeritus Professor Anthony Ashwaji says Nigeria has traveled this path before and it was not profitable but retrogressive.
We thought that this era of negative nationalism, as in Donald Trump's America, and unilateral border closures had been firmly put behind us for Nigeria and Africa generally. The obsolete had surfaced once again with a disconcerting, though characteristic, inhuman force of execution.
Nigeria's inflation rate, which has been declining since April 2019, rose to 11.6% in October, driven by food prices, which jumped 14.1% at the same period to an 18-month high. There are also effects of the closed borders on informal trade with Nigeria's neighbors. Border communities and legitimate businesses have also been caught in the crossfire. The boundary expert wants Nigeria to harmonize its policies with its neighbors.
If the open borders have intensified cross-border trade, informal trade, parallel trade, unofficial trade, but that is abused as smuggling, it is because the problem of cross-border trade is structural. It is structural. It is because there is policy disharmony between us and our neighbors.
As the debate on whether Nigeria has made more gains than losses from its close borders continues, there have also been discussions around Nigeria matching its socio-political interest with the continent's trade agreement. Darido, Channels Television News.
Now, it's about 2 weeks to the end of the year, and there are indications that only 58% of the nation's 2019 budget has so far been implemented as of June 2019. This has raised questions by some economic analysts who describe the budget implementation as poor, especially the capital component, which is meant for the provision of infrastructure and services. Now, some of the observations raised by the analysts and some lawmakers include the need to improve on revenue generation as well as block all leakages.
It was in December 2018 that President Muhammadu Buhari presented a budget proposal of 8.8 trillion naira before the National Assembly. This move was greeted with much enthusiasm from Nigerians who awaited its assent and implementation. After some months, the budget was approved. But there have been debate around implementation of the budget. Lawmakers at some of their meetings also raised concerns.
The actual release are not up to 30%, even some are below 30%. So I think it's an assumption, and even some MDAs are still complaining that they are even zero performance.
At one of the sessions before the National Assembly in October, the Minister of Finance told lawmakers that as at June 2019, the budget had achieved a 58% performance rate.
The average performance.
Mr. Ezeonyekbere is the lead director at the Center for Social Justice. He shares his thoughts on the 2019 budget implementation, especially the capital component.
As at the time Mr. President presented the budget to the National Assembly, less than 300 billion out of a capital budget of around 2.5 trillion had been released. So it wasn't even up to 10% that was released. So that is the extent of the implementation of the capital budget, which touches most on the lives of every Nigerian, especially the poor and the deprived.
He has an advice for the government on how they must improve revenue collection.
In trying to realize revenue for the government, there are a lot of leakages, stamp duties that have not been accounted for no matter what the administration pretends to be doing, leakages in value-added tax, leakages in company income tax, leakages everywhere. So I expect that the administration should invest more in making sure we get everyone who is supposed to be in the tax net into the tax net.
But another economic analyst thinks differently.
Some domestic borrowing from treasury yield and some government budget is supposed to support some of the capital projects. But the main avenue for capital projects support should be from the MDAs, not returning a lot of their money, and then the external borrowing, because the external borrowing is strictly for capital projects. And I'm so glad they have moved away from bilateral lending and the bonds, because they're very high rates.
It is few days before the end of 2019. What lies ahead of the government, however, is the need to ensure that the budget reflects positively on the lives of the people.
Let's examine this issue further. We go live to our Abuja studio where an economist is joining us now, Mr. Paul Alaje. It's a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, are you encouraged by the recent measures of the budget performance reporting system introduced by this current administration for all MDAs?
Yeah, I'm very impressed for bringing out the policy and introducing it. What is discouraging is that the performance itself is very low as we speak, particularly the capital component, capital expenditure component of the budget.
Now, do you think the return to the January-December budgetary cycle by 2020 will enhance the performance of the annual appropriations?
Absolutely. I believe it will enhance it. And I also understand that 2019 budget, there may be some setback because of rollover of some capital projects from 2019 budget to 2020 budget. Most countries of the world who don't have fixed fiscal year, many of them assume and they practice January to December. I'm happy that Nigeria has returned. I only hope that there will be no difference in the coming period. It is good investors, particularly those who would help nation develop, those who want to invest in rail, not lend to us in rail, those who want to invest in, say, capital expenditure, they want to invest on road, etc., etc. They want to work with countries that are predictable in terms of planning, countries with national economic development plan. If they are sure that our budget will be passed as at when due, they could read the document and also plan their investment. People will not just want to work with countries that are not predictable. So by so doing, if everybody have the understanding that Nigeria budget is coming from January and is going to be executed by December, we also need it internally as we can now predict what inflation is as at the time we are presenting budget. Recall that in 2018, President Buhari has assumed inflation figure that was being used. By the time budget was passed, it became a different ballgame entirely. This was the reality from 2015, 2016, 2017. But presentation of this budget now in January will make us adjust to know what is inflation figure saying, what is monetary policy rate saying, what is actual unemployment figure. At the time the budget is coming to life, we will know that our annual rate or annual figure of GDP, etc., will be what we can work with absolutely.
Now, finally, Mr. Alhaji, before I let you go, what do you think will be the major drawback to prevent an excellent budget performance? Would it be perhaps the structure of the economy, the civil service, or simply poor governance?
Well, beyond poor governance and the structure of the economy, a lot of things will definitely affect 2020 budget. I am not going to be a prophet of doom. First, you will not get 100% performance of 2020 budget because we've never had it in recent history, and I've not seen so many things change. Two, we need reform that will drive the spending, that will ensure the spending of these budget goes to 20% of capital expenditures, again 30% in 2019. So if we could put and mandate MDAs to spend those money, those funds, and make capital expenditure a priority for them, which is even lower than what we have in previous percentage-wise, I believe that we may not have the drawback. But of course, our releases, we still measure project performance mainly based on releases, not execution of projects. And the real argument that will touch Nigeria is not just when it's released, because it takes time between release and actual project execution. It's a lot of time. We have done one milestone. We've been able to go back to January to December. More importantly, we now need to release funds as at when due and not stop at that and in fact execute projects based on what is on the plan. Then we can say we are getting there someday.
Mr. Paul Alhaji, it was a pleasure having you with us on the News at 10.
Thank you for having me.
When the News at 10 returns, Transmission Company of Nigeria demands payment of over $14 million electricity debt by republics of Benin and Niger. That's on This Is News. Join us again.